which leads me on to question number 2, which is what is the function of the core? So we can understand the function of the core by understanding the function of the limbs. So we're going to break the body up into 2 parts of torso and limbs. So obviously we have 4 limbs, 1 torso. So as I've mentioned, we have ball and socket joints at the hips and the shoulders. Now those ball and socket joints are known as freely movable joints. They're synovial joints, which gives them the lubrication and the better movement, let's say. So they are freely movable joints. They have large ranges of movement. They have big, powerful muscles that wrap around them and produce that movement. So they are very strong joints. They are very powerful joints. So we have to understand them as the movement producers, if you will, because of the muscles that surround them and the range of movement that they have. What we can then do is look at the joints of the spine. There are many joints of the spine. They are known as cartilaginous joints. These joints are known as slightly movable joints. So that all these individual joints that go all the way up the spine, they have a small range of movement, which when you put them all together can create a large range of movement, i.e. when I sit up straight and I rotate, that's lots of joints moving a little bit, and then it creates one big movement. Now, the muscles that surround these, they aren't big, powerful muscles. They can rotate the spine, they can flex the spine, they can extend the spine. That is a role that they have. It's just not a primary role. Certainly when gross movement is involved, and certainly when loaded movement is involved. So if we talk about like body weight movement, then you have more license to move your spine because of the reduced load on it. When we talk about loaded movement, i.e. a deadlift, a rotation exercise, whatever it may be, then what we're talking about there is a lot of load, which is a problem for the spine. And there are sort of layers to the function. So what I would also say is the function of the core is to prevent movement. Now, if we look at a deadlift, for example, we would maintain, let's just say, a neutral spine. Very controversial topic, I know, but just stay calm and work with me here. So, heavy load, maintain the neutral spine. When we lift, we want to lift through the hips, so the glutes. Then we want to be able to lift the bar from the floor and essentially stand up straight. So the movement is produced by the glutes and the hamstrings. They extend the hip and the body comes upright. Now, the muscles of the torso are there to prevent any movement whilst we are going from this sort of, let's just say, sort of 80 degrees. So if we're 180 degrees here, stood up straight, we're 90 degrees straight over, we may be at about 110 degrees when we're in the deadlift. What we have to do is maintain neutral spine all the way up. That's maintained by the isometric static contraction of the torso. Now, if we lift and the spine bends, that would be known as an energy leak. So the force that was produced at the glutes is getting leaked out of the spine and it can't be transferred onto the bar to lift it up. So we then have to compensate somewhere else to get it up. So we have to understand from an exercise perspective, and certainly a loaded exercise perspective, that the limbs produce the movement, the torso prevents the movement. If we then move on to a sporting movement, like a throw, so it might be a pitch in baseball, it might be bowling in cricket, it might be throwing, it might be American football throwing, whatever it is, but a throwing movement. As a general rule, though that the power in those throws are created at the hip. Now, we don't need to maintain the neutral spine all the way through it, because what starts to happen now is a pulsing effect. So as we initiate the elasticity part of it, so as we wind up for the throw, there is an initial contraction then it will begin to relax a little. When we then get to the back of the winding up phase and it comes through for the throw, there will be another contraction and it will start to relax again. And then when we get to the end, it will contract again. So there is this contract, relax thing going on in the torso. When it starts to relax, it can allow the movement because there's less load on the spine, so the spine then can move. But when it goes through those important parts of the wind up and then the sort of the throwing element to it, there has to be these contractions because that's where we don't want the energy leak. So we have to understand the different functions of the core as we go up through different types of movement. So that in some respects is a bit of an overview of the function of the core, which should help you understand the differences, because movement isn't always the same and the body isn't the same within movement, as I've described, within like a deadlift exercise or a squat exercise or a press exercise or a pulling exercise than it is to a dynamic throw, for example, because they're very different. There's a lot of speed involved in throwing. There's a lot of force and strength involved in a deadlift. So again, the movement parameters change and how the body needs to work changes. So it's not just a one size fits all that the spine can bend, it should bend, we should lift with a bent spine, so on and so forth. I won't go into the mechanics of the spine because that's not for this podcast. We're talking more about core strength, core stability, core endurance.